the granite blocks that were found as the plugging stones, I believe, were also used as the counterweights in the counterweight lifting system. I believe that they were used differently, and so this would be the sled that I theorized, and this would be the block. We're just putting quarters in here to represent the weights. Okay, so this system would be in the Grand Gallery. It would slide up on the lowest part of the floor of the Grand Gallery. It would be hoisted up using manpower to lift it up, and then you would have your regular size block to lift up to be placed in the pyramid. Whether you considered that the smaller granite blocks or the even smaller limestone blocks, this system would be lifted up and pulled down to lift this system, offload the system. They would lift the system back up, onload another one, and do it again. Now, when you wanted to put extra weight on, say the 80-ton block, the huge block, right? So you have a massive amount of weight to lift this time, right? This ain't gonna cut it. It's not enough counterweight, it's not gonna do it. But if you add another counterweight, because there were three granite blocks found as plugging stones, you could lift that up, hook a loop, a pre-made loop that would tie these two together, and then you could do it again. And you could get 3 granite blocks. And there may have been more blocks that were plugging stones that were made of limestone that were just broken apart and taken out of the ascending passage. If you guys know what I'm talking about, great. But the thing is that you could, if this was a reasonable size weight a group of humans could lift, well, you could keep pulling up blocks and attaching them to each other so that they could do the lifting for one giant block. And then when you offload this block and you need to reset it all, you would just untie these blocks. You would not have to offload the weight. You could reset the weight, put another giant block on, lift another weight, tie it to the weight in front of it, and do it again until you had enough counterweight that you could easily lift the biggest blocks in the entire pyramid, the 80-ton blocks. And each time you offloaded this, you'd be able to reset this to reset the counterweight in smaller chunks. And it would be so simple. It would be a lot easier. Now, there's some other details I'd like to share, okay? A lot of people talk about the, now this sliding weight would obviously have a lot more friction than if it were rolling on cedar logs as Houdin theorized, okay? But we do know that the Egyptians, through their hieroglyphs, have showed that when they were pulling their statues on sleds along to move them to a new location, they would pour water, and tests have shown that if you pour water on the sand or whatever they were dragging it on, the friction coefficient was half. So it was half as hard to pull. And I believe that that's what they did in this system. They just used what they already knew. They hooked these systems up, and then what they did was they poured water on this, probably with Tafla, which Tafla is a little known thing that is kind of like a very slick lubricant. Now, the thing is that normally when they were pouring fluids for the sleds to slide upon, they were on level ground. But this is not, obviously, level ground. So what they did was they poured water or water with Tafla onto the system, onto the floor of the Grand Gallery, and that made it much easier to slide this counterweight system. But that water, since it's on a slant, is going to flow downward. Well, that water is going to flow down here. And where is it going to go? It's going to go further down outside of the Grand Gallery and straight down the ascending corridor. And that's where a lot of men were probably standing with ropes, helping to pull and actuate this whole system. And that water would be either absorbed or liquid would be absorbed or wasted or whatever. But we know that right here at the very bottom of the Grand Gallery, there's what they call the well shaft that leads down to the grotto. And history shows that when people rediscovered the pyramids, when they threw a rock down the well shaft, they heard a splash of water. So this would be an area where the lubricating fluid could flow and keep the entire floor of the Grand Gallery lubricated, but they could recycle the water that went down the shaft and didn't go down, keep going down out of the Grand Gallery and out of the main entrance. It would just, there was even a lip on the edge of the bottom of the Grand Gallery that shows that it probably directed the liquid into the well shaft, and that well shaft could be used to recycle if they sent buckets down, to recycle that fluid and bring it to the top once again. Okay, so that's basically another theory that I have about it. The other thing I know is that this is a magic angle. It's 26.5 degrees. It's just the sweet spot between being easy to slip down and get started moving and being so vertical that you can't stop it from moving. It always wants to slide. And it's not such a vertical angle that it would be hard for humans to lift it. They wouldn't have to lift it vertically. And the point I'm making about the reason I bring that up is that this angle isn't just used for the Grand Gallery. With the exception of just very few, almost all the large pyramids had this exact angle, but we didn't find Grand Galleries that had this exact angle going to their subterranean burial chambers. And that subterranean burial chamber probably doubled as its own sliding counterweight system for building the pyramid on top of it, because it was at the exact same angle. There was another thing that was interesting when they got to the bottom of these descending passages in the pyramids, was that when they got to the bottom, they got wide, which would be a perfect area to pull the blocks in and push them aside if you were trying to put, move stuff in and out of the pyramid, fix something or anything, because these blocks were the width of the tunnel, so it wasn't easy to work around them. But all of the major pyramids have an area where the block could either be pushed aside or it got wider on both sides, and then a person could walk around and hook up these, connect weights, remove things, and do stuff like that. So I believe that was the system. And then when they built some of the pyramid above them, then they would build another counterweight system, and then they would have a series of blocks. In addition to this, we also know that there is the great, I believe it's the Big Void. It's a large area that they think may have been a second Grand Gallery that actually was at a better angle and altitude to lift the final stones on top of the relieving chambers in the Great Pyramid. But in any case, I believe that these systems were repeated, that there wasn't just one of these. This one was a special one for the Grand Galleries, but a similar system was used to build all the pyramids. But they could use this system to actually build on top of itself. I'll have to do another demonstration of showing how you can lift a block above the top of the destination of the whole counterweight system. So this is the Grand Gallery without the walls on it. This is just the benches and the floors. The thing is that if this system were to work as I've described, it would be very difficult for a person to maneuver around here with these brakes, with these ropes, and all these systems. And they know that there are these slots in the walls of the Grand Gallery that run parallel to this angle. It doesn't go like this, it follows it, but at a distance at the same thing. And what I believe is those slots were so that they could slide wood in, and it would make a catwalk for workers to attach these loops of rope that would which would attach one counterweight to the other one. And so the Grand Gallery is very tall, and that would be too far away for them to easily attach the loops of rope that connected one counterweight block to another. So just like they found in the air shafts, they found these copper hooks that they believed had long wooden handles, and that would enable somebody to reach down, if they had a catwalk with openings in it, to reach down and use them to angle these loops of rope so that these two things could be connected. So that, I believe, that explains what those notches are in the walls of the Grand Gallery that are only a portion of the height of the gallery, but it would enable people to stand clear of the counterweights that they were connecting and operating and stuff like that. And One other point I'd like to make is that Houdin believed that this whole system was only used to build the king and queen's chambers, and the rest of the pyramid was built using a spiral ramps. He has a spiral ramp theory, and I believe that the reason that spiral ramp theory was used is because there's no one believed that they could lift blocks at such a high angle. They would have to lift it at like 7 degrees or so. But if you had a counterweight system, you could, divide up the weight into small chunks and then make that whole system lift something at a much higher angle. So his theory had a ramp running around the almost to the outer perimeter of the pyramid, but that was an internal ramp with internal tunnels and all this other stuff. And one point I would like to make is that the Great Pyramid is Khufu's pyramid. The second pyramid, which many people mistakenly believed was the larger pyramid because it's on a higher elevation on the Giza Plateau, is Khafre's pyramid or Khafre's pyramid. And the thing is that if it were true that you needed a spiral ramp system to build the Great Pyramid, the second pyramid, his son's pyramid, Khafre's pyramid, is almost the same size, so it would have the same problem, so there would be a spiral ramp inside of that one. Also, another thing I'll say about the Khufu's pyramid, the first pyramid, the Great Pyramid, is that it's considered an 8-sided pyramid, not a 4-sided pyramid, because there's an indentation on all sides, and I believe that is because they use systems like this, and they needed that system kind of countersunk into the pyramid in order to put systems under it to block the weights and keep them from sliding down. And they had teams of workers that were basically running weights and stones up all sides of the pyramid. Either there was a counterweight on one side and the load to be lifted on the other side, so there was either 2 or 4 lifting systems, and these would be repeated up the pyramid. But in any case, I'll get into the other things that I believe that how the pyramids were made, how they were constructed, and stuff like that. The main point is this. The main point is that these were the granite blocking stones. They were divided into pieces. They were connected by men who were hanging from the ceiling and with hooks and connections and stuff like that. And that's how they were able to move stones by resetting these counterweights quickly in little chunks, and then just use them all collectively to lift a load and then be able to easily reset this whole system. So, thank you.